Good afternoon and thanks for joining us. After months of ads, campaigns, and headlines, Election Day is finally here.
And this year's election has seen record turnout both in person and through mail-in voting because of ongoing social issues and the coronavirus pandemic. The top of the election, of course, focused on the race for the president between incumbent Donald Trump and Democratic nominee and former Vice President Joe Biden. The most recent Marquette Law School poll shows Biden with a 5-point lead over President Trump in Wisconsin. The president narrowly carried the Badger State in 2016.
There are two congressional races in our area today. The first is between incumbent Republican Mike Gallagher running against Democratic State Representative Amanda Stuck. Gallagher has served 2 terms since succeeding Reed Ribble. Stuck has served in the state assembly for 3 terms.
Meanwhile, to the south in the 6th Congressional District, incumbent Republican Glenn Grothman is running against Democrat Jessica King. Grothman, a vocal supporter of President Trump, has held the seat since 2014 and served in the Wisconsin legislature since 1993 before that. King is a lawyer who briefly served as state senator from 2011 to 2013 after Senator Randy Hopper was recalled.
And many have already cast their ballot this year. According to the U.S. Election Project, more than 100 million ballots have already been cast. These votes represent more than 47% of registered voters nationwide. 21 states and Washington, D.C. have seen more than half of their registered voters cast ballots already. The 100 million plus ballots already cast represent 73% of the ballots cast in the 2016 presidential election.
And because of the massive amount of absentee ballots, several communities across Wisconsin have been authorized to use central count absentee ballot sites. This means instead of processing those ballots at polling places, they will be processed and canvassed at one location. Green Bay's is being held at the KI Convention Center.
We have team coverage across Northeast Wisconsin for Election Day, covering both polling locations and those central count locations.
We go live now to Brittany Schmidt, who joins us with more on those responsible for making sure the election is safe and secure. Brittany.
Jeff and Sarah, I'm out here with Green Bay Commander Kevin Warwick. He's been monitoring the election all day, obviously for security reasons. So, Commander, what have you seen throughout the day? Any calls for service at any of the polling locations?
You know, today's gone relatively smooth. You know, there have been some minor complaints around polling locations. Nothing major, and it was just solved with education, and people have been really good with us.
Throughout the day, a steady stream of people wearing their masks did come out to vote. Voters I spoke to here and at other polling locations across the city tell me they were surprised at how smooth the voting process went today.
This is one of just 20 municipalities in Outagamie County, and I've talked with clerks in other communities who say things are going very smoothly in their areas as well.
Outside of making new friends in line, I also noticed people bringing books and even their laptops to help pass the time while they wait. Live in Appleton, Dakota Sherrick, Action 2 News.
Dakota, thank you.
And finally, Jason Zimmerman joins us from Neenah, where the voting continues there as well. Jason.
Jeff, I spoke to the Winnebago County Clerk's office just a short time ago, and they tell me so far they have had no major issues with voting. Now, here in Neenah, the mayor says there was a line this morning, but as you can see right behind me, the wait to vote at this moment is very short.
We are joined today by the chairman of the Democratic Party in Brown County, Mr. Mike Moran, and Jim Fitzgerald, the chairman of the Republican Party of Brown County. There is so much interest this year. Almost 51% of registered voters have voted early in Brown County. What has translated, Jim, let's start with you, to the local races? Because from our perspective, it seems like there's certainly been more money spent on local races and there's more interest in local races. Why do you think that is?
Well, there certainly has been a lot more money spent in local races. We've been outspent by a significant amount. There's been a lot of outside money from Illinois and California and places beyond.
Up and down the ticket, we have absolutely terrific candidates running for office. And we've seen a huge amount of interest in the local races and not just in the presidential election, which is, sort of something you tend to see.
Well, as always, we are keeping you covered this Election Day 2020, both on air and online. And then when we're not on air today, not here in studio, you can still, of course, stay updated on all the Election Day news at WBAY.com. We're joined now by our Isha Morales, who is now captaining, if you will, our First Alert digital desks.
This is a central count in Green Bay, so I can kind of like go back and forth and show people what they're not necessarily seeing on air here online. So I can show you another example. This is a live shot that we've got with another reporter that's at the Green Bay polls at Lambeau at the tailgate, Johnsonville tailgate there. So
we have team coverage across northeast Wisconsin to both polling places and central count locations.
We go now live to Sarah Thompson, who is at the KI Convention Center with more.
Cam and Bill, this is the central count for the city of Green Bay right behind me here at the KI Center. Poll workers and clerks have been here since early this morning casting those absentee ballots that were cast early ahead of Election Day or dropped off today in those ballot boxes. And it is a record amount of absentee ballots that they are counting. I'm going to step out of the way so you can take a look at what's happening behind me here. The mayor says more than half of the city's registered voters, 55%, voted before today, casting 32,000 absentee ballots. That is going to keep these crews busy well into the night. Exactly how long, we're not sure yet. At last count, 4 p.m., we learned more than 12,000 ballots have been counted so far. Now, one of the tabulators did get jammed, but there is a technician here on site to fix any issues. That's resolved and back up and running at normal speed. As for the poll workers you're seeing, some signed up for the whole day and some are working in shifts. But no matter what, people are dedicated to help until every ballot is counted, which the mayor says could be into the early morning hours.
Again, like I said, things going very smoothly at our polling locations around town. Everybody, is I think, just enjoying the process.
The city consolidated all 6 of its polling locations into the site of a former Shopko store, which has about 100,000 square feet. Now, about 20 poll workers are also at City Hall, where about 9,000 absentee ballots are being processed. The mayor says at the current pace, they should wrap up between 10 and 11 o'clock tonight. The in-person count will be done much sooner.
Well, everything seemed really safe and very, socially distant. I chose to vote in person because my mom said I had to.
And I chose to vote in person because these are the first count. This is what counts.
Now the results so far in the presidential race here in the state of Wisconsin, with 64% of the vote in, President Donald Trump is leading Joe Biden by 51 to 47%.
Village leaders here in Bellevue say they were expecting longer lines, especially based on the turnout they had for early in-person voting. But the last people who were here tonight to vote cast their ballot just after 8:30 tonight, and they didn't have to wait too long when they got in line at 8 o'clock, 20 minutes to a half an hour or so. And those needing to register to vote, though, waited a little bit longer to go through that process and then vote.
Cammie, just within the last half hour, we got our final update of the night from Green Bay Mayor Eric Genrich and Police Chief Andrew Smith, starting with a big thank you to poll workers. They both said today's event went smoothly. No major issues to report at the polls. When we talked to Chief Smith earlier in the week, his plan was to make sure today's election felt like elections in the past. He says mission accomplished.
Dr. Jacobs, let's go right to our areas. We looked a little bit in our last cut-in about half an hour, 40 minutes ago. Let's see what's changed, at least in Brown County. Still a very low number of votes in.
And I think part of that is because of the counts we're hearing about at the central count site. A lot of this isn't going to get released until they're done with the count, and I think we're just waiting for some of these to come in. Again, I think the expectation is that President Trump is going to lead as he did in 2016, but it's hard to extrapolate from these small numbers we have right now.
All right, let's move on down a little bit. Outagamie County, Winnebago County, again, low numbers. Winnebago County higher, though, at 69%. Is this on par with what you saw in 2016?
Well, it's interesting. He's got about a 5-point lead from what he had in 2016, and we're seeing some of these counties some outperformance. I mean, even Manitowoc County, we see some significant big numbers that we're seeing in counties like that. But again, I think there's a little bit of wonder about exactly what is in the counts and what isn't in the counts yet, because we're not getting that announced when we're getting the counts in.
So the vote count here in Wisconsin right now being updated in just the past hour. Joe Biden with a lead of fewer than 10,000 votes in Wisconsin over President Trump. About 98% of the votes are in and counted. Some of the final decisive votes being added up in Brown County were counting wrapped up in the past hour.
I can further break that down for you. For Brown County, Trump having 75,865 votes, and Biden for Brown County 65,509 votes. Again, these results just being posted in the last several minutes to the Brown County Clerk's website. We've been checking and waiting all morning since the count had officially wrapped up here at the KA Convention Center at 4:20 this morning. Of course, as you know, poll workers had been here since 7 o'clock yesterday morning, starting to count those absentee ballots here at the KI Convention Center, the central count location, and they were counting more than 31,000 absentee ballots, and they just finished that up, as we said, at 4:20 this morning. Tabulators had been brought in from other polling locations throughout the night and overnight to speed up that process. And earlier this morning, I did have a chance to speak with Mayor Genrich, and he said he's really proud of the city of Green Bay.
Yeah, just very grateful to all of our voters who came out, all of the poll workers that supported our effort, everybody who is here at our central count operation. It takes a great deal of support from the community, from our employees to make something like this happen. So very glad that it went smoothly.
The Associated Press and several news networks are now projecting Joe Biden as the winner of Wisconsin in the race for the White House. The Trump campaign already has indicated it will seek a recount once that vote is certified. The final numbers show Biden with about a 20,000 vote lead over President Trump in the Badger State. President Trump narrowly won Wisconsin by a similar margin back in 2016. His campaign released a statement saying public polling was used as a voter suppression tactic, and in part, quote, Wisconsin has been a razor-thin race, as we always knew that it would be. There have been reports of irregularities in several Wisconsin counties, which raise serious doubts about the validity of the results, end quote. The Wisconsin Elections Commission says it has been completely transparent and following the law throughout the entire election.
Our election was executed with precision, and it's also, every step of the process is publicly observable. And I think that's really important. Every step of the elections process is publicly observable.
Sarah, I chatted with Brown County Clerk Sandy Juneau about that very topic, the possibility of a recount. And if you remember, Wisconsin clerks had to conduct a recount back in 2016 for the presidential election. So she says this is something they've been through before and are, of course, prepared to do so again if necessary. In 2016, the recount found very little discrepancies. Former Republican Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker tweeting today that President Trump's numbers only went up by 130 votes, certainly not enough to change the outcome. However, Juneau says a recount would be very different this year compared to 4 years ago.
The one thing that's very, very different from 2016 and could really actually make an impact is the fact that in 2016, the whole county had 30,000 absentee ballots. For 2020, we have approximately 100,000.
We had crews out there the whole time, so we were there watching the entire process, just like some observers were. And so I replaced Sarah Thompson, who was out there with the early shows at 10:30, and they were still counting ballots, slow but surely. There were a few empty tables, so you could see it was kind of slowing down a little bit, but at that point they were only 2/3 through the absentee ballots, and they were looking at 31,000. And so we were just kind of waiting and keeping tabs, and at 4:20 we were there when they put those final ballots into the machine, and people were pretty excited.
Yeah. So you're alerting everybody as the night's going on through your Twitter account, and you're observing what's happening there. Were you aware of how much interest was starting to be focused on what you were reporting on? Because it became very apparent if you stayed up late into the night and into the morning, how important these central count votes were going to be in Wisconsin.
Right, I didn't. I was following what was happening in Milwaukee because obviously they had way more votes than we had to count absentee. Almost 320,000. Right, and they had central vote locations there. So I was following along on Twitter, just kind of monitoring everything. And when I saw the reporters kind of say, oh, Milwaukee's in, I'm like, wait, Green Bay doesn't have as many, but we're behind. So I thought once that went, that kind of put Biden ahead of Trump. And so I kind of knew, like, oh, well, if we're the last big city to report, we're going to kind of be the swing here and say, okay, are we staying with Biden or is Trump going to lead? So that's when I really kind of noticed people from across the nation were tweeting at me. And so I was kind of following along with them saying, hey, I'm checking with Brown County. 420 of the last votes were counted. I went over to the county clerk's office and was talking to them on the phone while looking in the window being like, hey, are the votes there?
Sure.
And we got those at 6 o'clock.
So real quick before I move to the next question,
Yeah.
how many new Twitter followers do you have today?
I think more than 100.
Okay.